Alright, welcome back to my direct rewatch. We're going to start episode 6 today, and before we get into it, I want to just give a quick little disclaimer, or like a trigger warning maybe, because this episode deals a lot with depression and depictions of substance abuse, and I'm going to be talking a lot about it. It's not the easiest episode to get through. It is my favorite, which might seem like an oxymoron, but I do love this episode, and I do also recognize that it can be hard to get through, so I'm going to try to keep it lighthearted while also being respectful of the very serious issues that are portrayed in it. And I think it is important to talk about them and also talk about how well or how not so well Druck decides to deal with these issues. So, with all that being said, please just, be careful with this. Take care of yourselves first and foremost, and let's get into part 1. I'm going to start pretty much immediately. So, the last time we saw Mateo was on Friday, and now it's Sunday. So, in between those two times, we know from this first shot that Mateo has been smoking too much. He hasn't really been eating a lot, and what he has been eating is gross as hell. And David is right there. David's picture is right there. He's still ruminating about all of that. So I love how this first shot is framed. It's also so dark. There's the stark contrast between the darkness on the edges of the frame and then the white in the very middle. This is such a beautiful shot. You can already tell that this episode is gonna, oof. It's gonna be rough, just from the way that this first shot is composed. And then the first glimpse we get of Mateo is him upside down. Upside down shots are usually used in film and TV to imbue you with a sense of disorientation and chaos, and it's no different here. I love that slow spin because it's still on kind of an angle. When we do spin all the way, we're still not looking at him head on. The spin started with us looking at him head on upside down, right? But it doesn't spin in a way that would have us looking at him head on right side up, if that makes sense. So it spins at an angle, which makes it even more disorienting and chaotic, and it definitely is used to symbolize how Mateo's head has been these past 2 days. Just complete chaos. Nothing makes sense. That part is really interesting to me. I remember being confused the first time I saw this because we definitely hear the sound of his phone vibrating. 100% it is there. But his phone is broken. So logically, it shouldn't be vibrating. When he goes to pick it up, it doesn't turn on. So I'm assuming it is broken, right? But he still hears it vibrate. And I think this is a great way to once again manipulate the POV, which we know Druck loves doing so much. We hear the sound of the phone vibrating just like Mateo probably does. I'm sure we've all experienced this where we want someone to contact us so badly, where we just hear our phone vibrate or we hear the notification ding, even though it actually didn't happen. It's like a phantom phone vibration. And that's exactly what's happening to Mateo here. He wants David to contact him so badly that his mind tricked him into thinking that he actually heard it vibrate when in reality it didn't. I think that's really cool that we heard it as well, because we are in Mateo's POV. So I can't talk about this first clip without talking about the song. I once again cannot pronounce it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to offend anyone. So there it is. There she goes. That's what it's called. I'm pretty sure it means I won't go dancing today, something like that. There are a lot of different translations that vary slightly in their translations, and I thought I just would pick the one that makes the most sense in English, the one that flows the best, and the one that I felt I could analyze the best. So I'm sorry if this isn't the most correct translation, it's just the one that flows the best in English to me. So the lyrics. I know I said I was in, but I can't cope, and don't want to go where I've been 1,000 times before, because there are always the same people there, and because I'm tired, I don't think I'll go dancing today. I don't think I'll go out today. I think I'll smoke weed today and stay home alone. If that's not exactly what Mateo is doing right now, someone tell me what is. I know I said I was in, but I can't cope. I think that's a really interesting lyric, and I know it's not completely properly translated, but like I said, that's the one that makes the most sense in English to me. But I think that really goes back to Mateo putting his all into this relationship with David, even though there were still signs of him having internalized homophobia. He was still in it. He still broke up with Sarah to be with David, but now it's all ruined and now he can't cope with that. I think it's important to note that this episode and this slump that Mateo is in isn't just because of David. I think that's really, really important. David sending him those messages and telling him that he doesn't want anything from him was definitely the last straw, but I think Mateo is feeling like this right now and in this horrible state of mind right now because for the first time in so long, he was active. I've mentioned a billion times that Mateo is so passive in all of his relationships. He always just looks tired and he's always leaning up on something. He always lets other people speak for him. He doesn't really speak his own mind. He just lets things happen to him and around him. But with David, it was the first time that he went for something and that he let himself be active and let himself feel things. It's not just because David rejected him, it's because this is the first time in probably a long time that Mateo has fought for something that would make him happy and that would make him fulfilled. And this is how the world is treating him. And because of his underlying symptoms of depression and anxiety, which I'm not even gonna say are speculation anymore. I think this episode fucking proves it. So I'm just gonna talk about it as if it is 100% confirmed that he has at least depression. So because of that underlying depression there, it feels like he's just stuck like this forever. It feels like when he doesn't try, he feels tired, he feels passive. And then when he does try, he gets knocked down. So what the fuck is the point? So I want to make that clear. That's why I think Mateo is in this slump. It's not singularly because of David. It's bigger than that. It's more complex than that. Jesus, he looks so bad. So you can also see here that Mateo is in the same outfit that he was wearing on Friday. He puts on like a hoodie and a jacket and a couple of other things when he goes to see David, but I'm assuming he was still wearing this underneath, so the show kind of lets you assume that he just took all of that off and hasn't changed since then, and it is now Sunday. And Mateo just does not care. Maybe he didn't even notice that he was wearing the same clothes, or he doesn't care to change them. He's also leaning on the door frame. There's so much leaning and slumping and slouching in this episode. Mateo's body language really hits home his mental state. I know he's also high too, but I do think there is so much overlap. I mean, he got high because he's feeling so awful. So I feel like it's still worth it to talk about the symptoms of depression that are there. Even if they're exacerbated by him being stoned out of his mind, I do think they would still be there even if he wasn't stoned. Yeah, he just has no energy, no motivation whatsoever. He drank an entire bottle of wine, either yesterday, the day before, who knows. He brings his phone. That's one of the only things he brings to the couch. He brings his little novelty pen and his phone, even though his phone is broken, which I think is more evidence of him still having hope that David will contact him somehow, even though his phone is broken. So I think that's kind of cool. And I think there you can feel some of the frustration that might be bubbling under the surface here. We know from episode 4 that after Mateo experiences something that's very emotionally taxing, he has a period of hypersensitivity to both sensory information and also irritability. We saw him snap at people and let loose in ways that he wouldn't normally do, and the ways in which he lets loose is usually by throwing things and snapping at people, and saying things in a harsher way than he would normally. So I think this is a good setup for what's going to happen in the next clip. You can see a little bit of that frustration and that hypersensitivity to irritation right here. Yeah, he basically just lays down. He's not even holding up his weight at all. He's not even trying. And he immediately starts fiddling with his pen too. This entire episode is just going to be me pointing out symptoms of anxiety and depression, but I think that is another one. Just like playing with things that are around you, just like random things. We've seen him do it quite a bit with like plants and with this pen specifically. We're going to see it later as well. This is one of his nervous tics. It could be because he's anxious. It could be because he's just completely distracted. It could be a way for him to try to ground himself in reality, even though he knows he's distracted. Could be a multitude of things, but it's a nice detail. He completely ignores that question too. Where was your head at? He immediately just asks if he can have a piece of paper. He doesn't even attempt to answer that question because he knows he can't. He knows that it would be too much to get into, and he's not about to do that right now. This is another symptom of depression, the inability to concentrate and remember things. We saw this when he was taking his test back in episode 4. He could not concentrate. He was literally like having sensory overload. And even with the cheat sheet, we're going to find out later, he still didn't do well on the test. So this is just more of that showing its face. So you see that Mateo attempts to get Amira to stay, which I think is really, really important. In general, this episode is Mateo's lowest point, definitely. But I think within this episode, there are levels to it, right? I think this clip is not the worst that it gets. The next clip is still not the worst that it gets. I think personally, his true lowest point can be seen in clips 3 and 4. So he's not there yet. Can you imagine? It gets worse. It does. It gets worse. And you can see that here, that he's not in his lowest point because he's still trying to make this connection. He's still fighting against that urge to completely isolate himself. He doesn't want Amira to leave. He doesn't push her away. He doesn't snap at her in any irredeemable way. When he feels so awful and when his depression is this bad, his instinct is to isolate. And we can see him here trying to fight against that, but it's not going to work for much longer, unfortunately. Yeah, he just slams his body back into the couch. He is not in a mental state right now to be able to hear this and take anything from it. Yeah, he's not there yet. There's more of that frustration bubbling up. Once Amira mentions Sarah, you can see even more of that frustration under the surface. And we know it's going to culminate in the next clip. So even though Mateo tried a little bit to get Amira to stay, she still left. I don't know how I feel about what Amira said. I don't think it was right for her to mention Sarah. But also from an outsider's perspective, I can understand that Amira would think that Mateo is the only one in the wrong here. I've said a couple times that I think both Mateo and Sarah did some shitty things to each other. But from an outsider perspective, I think, yeah, you could understand why Amira would take Sarah's side. Was that still the right thing to say? No, I don't think that's going to help him. Maybe she's trying to do the whole tough love thing, but I don't know, Amira. I don't know. And he hears his phone vibrate again. And then more of the frustration going into the next clip, where we see that frustration completely bubble over. So the first 2 shots of this clip are weed, and then Mateo staring directly into the camera again for a pretty long time. So I think this is by far the most obvious and direct instance of one of these look into the camera moments. And as just a little recap of all the ones that we've had so far, this is the 6th one. Kind of crazy, right? So the first one was right after the panic attack in episode 3. The second one was in episode 4 when Mateo was experiencing sensory overload while he was trying to take his test. The third one was after the date in episode 5 when Mateo is listening to Take Me to Church in his room. The fourth one was right after that one when Mateo tells Hans about David. And then the fifth one was also in episode 5. There were quite a few in episode 5, right after Mateo gets the text from David. So the ones that were in episode 4 and 5 were pretty quick. I actually, when I was trying to get the screenshots for them, it was a little bit difficult to get them because they happen relatively quickly. Even the one at the end of episode 5, he only looks directly into the camera for a little bit before he looks away again. But I noticed that this one, as well as the one in episode 3, are held for a lot longer comparatively. And I think this could be a super, super cool parallel if you look at that one as a calm after the storm and this one as a calm before the storm. So when he looks into the camera in episode 3, it is after he's had his panic attack and he's calmed down a little bit, he's hugging the pillow, he's listened to his music. It's definitely calmer. He's looking at us after he has experienced something super intense and knows that we've witnessed him do that. And he also knows that we couldn't help him through that as well. We just had to sit there and watch while he was having a panic attack. And this one feels more like a calm before the storm. This clip is the one where Mateo blows up at the guys, and it starts what I think is Mateo's true lowest point. This is the point where he completely gives in to that negative coping mechanism that he has of isolation, and he just doesn't let anyone be close to him anymore. He blows up on his best friends and makes himself be completely alone. And because of that, this look right at the beginning feels like kind of a warning. The only other time we've seen him look into the camera for this long was right after he had a panic attack. So him looking directly into the camera again for that long serves almost like a warning of shit is about to go down again, just like it did last time. You thought it was bad before. It's about to get even worse. And this song is also interesting. There's only a couple lyrics that I want to talk about, but it's called Stranger by 070 Shake. So the lyrics say, "Tell it to me straight, or am I too much of a stranger? My mama said, don't talk to strangers like me. Baby, I'm a stranger to you." And I think those lyrics are really perfect in two senses. The sense that right now Mateo is a stranger to his friends, but also he's kind of a stranger to us too. He's looking directly at us. Even though we're in his POV, we've never seen him this bad. And once again, all we can do is sit there and watch it. We can't prevent what's about to happen from happening. So I think it's super cool. I love this look. Everyone loves this, right? Fucking iconic. And then the guys looking back at him, they know something's up too. This is a little bit comedic, but also, like, you can genuinely see that they're worried. They know that this is not right. He doesn't mention that his phone is broken throughout this entire conversation. I think in the beginning it's kind of a fallback for him, like just in case he feels worse at the end of this conversation, he just won't mention it for now. And the way that they're sitting just completely shows that divide between them. Mateo is sitting away from the guys, it is the three of them, and then him. It is very obviously divided. We've seen them stand like this before, but it's very obvious here. You can see that Mateo is immediately kind of checking out of this conversation. He's not focusing. He does not give a shit. He's not even pretending to give a shit. And of course, they start talking about girls again. And that's when you get the wide shot and you can see just how far apart they are. You can see Mateo is even like turning his body away from them. He's like barely here. Yeah, his eyes are just not focusing on anything here. I really love that. Carlos. I love Carlos so much. That's such a sweet way of implicitly giving Mateo some advice. He looks right at Mateo when he starts saying it. When he starts saying like, oh, if you want to relax, you should go. Like, he's obviously trying to tell Mateo that without directly telling him that. I love that so much. Carlos is definitely the most perceptive out of the guys, I think. We're also going to see Jonas do a similar kind of thing at the end of this episode too, which is cool. I don't think Mateo was stupid. I think he realizes that Carlos was looking at him when he said that and subtly trying to imply that Mateo needs some help. And in response to that, Mateo literally gets up and distances himself even more from the guys. He gets really defensive immediately. He only answers their questions with more questions, which is definitely something that people do when they're trying to isolate themselves. And I love that question specifically of how should I feel? I think that's a great signal of just how much Mateo has let other people speak for him and how tired he is. He doesn't even know how to verbalize for himself how he feels. Even further, he's kind of trying to gauge the guys' reactions. Like maybe they'll tell him how they think he feels so he can properly prepare like a lie to say to them. So I think there's a lot of layers to that question in particular. Mateo is really good at hiding. He is. He's good at deflecting all of this stuff. He's good at isolating himself. He avoids the question. He uses his mom as an excuse again. And then, as soon as possible, asks another question and turns the attention of the conversation back to the guys. Textbook isolation. But the guys don't really let him escape like he wants to. Okay, so from this point on, there is quite a bit of tension. It was already very tense based on how this clip started with him looking directly into the camera, and you could just feel that shit was gonna go super badly. But right there, the camera pushes in on Mateo right after Jonas says that Sarah posted about him. You can feel Mateo get extremely anxious right here. He looks anxious, he starts biting his lip, he starts pacing, he can't sit still, his eyes are darting back and forth. He quickly tries to inhale even more weed, which are all things that we saw him do during the panic attack scene in episode 3. These are just like more subdued versions of them. I think that is what brings all of that underlying frustration and anger that we saw from the last clip to the surface, because now he's anxious. He's not just kind of done with this conversation and trying to, it seems like he's just trying to get through this so the guys will leave again, but now he's anxious because he doesn't know what Sarah wrote. He hasn't had a chance to check because his phone is broken, which he still hasn't told the guys. He might be assuming that Sarah outed him in that post. So his head is just like swimming with all of these possibilities and ruminating, and that is what brings all of that anger to the surface. Yeah, he avoids that question again by just focusing on Sarah. That is all that he can think of right now is, oh fuck, what did she write? What did she write? It really shows you for sure what is on his mind right now. It's not just a way for him to avoid the question of how are you? It's also just a desperate attempt to quiet all of these anxious ruminations that are going on in his mind. Another question. He always answers questions with questions. And now you can see that he's done. He's fucking done. Just like we saw him do in episode 4, he is snapping. All of Mateo's pent-up anger is finally coming out here. We know from the last clip that Mateo is at a place where he is more susceptible to irritability. And just like back in episode 4, we know that Mateo can snap at people if he's pushed far enough. So he finally says what he's been thinking for weeks now. Every time we've seen him with the guys, he has looked distant, he has felt disconnected. He's always stayed quiet about it though, because he just accepted that that's what it was. But now he's done. He really is. He can't do it anymore. He can't keep it all inside anymore. I also love how he's standing up here and all of the shots of Jonas and the guys are like from his perspective. They're at like a downward angle. So we really feel like we are in Mateo's perspective when we're looking back at Jonas and the other guys. And the fact that he's standing up here just makes him even more scary, which is what he's trying to do. He's trying to intimidate them. He's trying to make them leave because he does not want to be around anyone anymore. He's stopped trying to fight against the urge to isolate himself. He's trying to force them to leave, force himself to be alone, even though he also knows that he hates that. You know, you can see even more literal physical distance between them. Mateo is standing, they're all sitting, and he keeps going until they leave. And then he still doesn't mention that his phone is broken when Yuna says, text us when you're feeling better. He does not care. All he cares about right now is being alone. And it's all spurred by that anxiety, by that depression taking over. And I think now we see Mateo at his true darkest place. These next two clips are him at his worst, I think. Because we've seen him blow up on some of the people who care most about him. We've seen him scream, not just raise his voice, not just like throw some cups at a wall, not just like snap at someone. No, he screamed at them. He was willing to do whatever it took to get them out so he could self-destruct on his own. That last shot of him shutting the computer is just another way to symbolize how he's shutting himself out from the rest of the world, I think. Alright, that's all I'm going to talk about for this part. I will see y'all in part 2 when we talk about clips 3 and 4, which are Mateo's lowest point. Yay, can't wait. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.